Welcome to All Electric Conversations, where we talk with pioneers in traveling with electric vehicles. We're your hosts, Katie and Steve Krivolovic of the All Electric family. From road trips and towing to daily life, we'll hear stories of wanderlust and progress to inspire your own adventures with All Electric Conversations.
And we're back for another All Electric Conversations, and today we have Bearded Tesla Guy. We really had a great time out at CES, and one of the great things was meeting him and his wife and getting to know them a little bit better. So anyways, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. So, Bearded Tesla Guy, and yes, we did meet at CES. It was quite an amazing event. It's really becoming, more of a automotive event, in my opinion, like electrification, which is really cool, really fun to see. But yeah, I just have a YouTube channel and talk about the electric life, just like you guys.
Yeah, and you just took on YouTube is now all that you do, right?
Full time, yeah, it's pretty crazy. I've been doing this for coming up on 3 years now, and it's been quite a blessing. I feel very fortunate to be here, but as we came to the end of the year, it's something that's been weighing on me heavily. And I got to be honest, it's been really hard to really put my heart into work. So at the beginning of the year, things just started to make sense, and I delayed, and then finally I put in a 30-day notice, and the rest is history. So this is my first official week full time on YouTube, which is crazy, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
congrats.
awesome.
Yeah, that's not an easy feat, and
No.
just you said 3 years, so that's pretty dang good. Good job. Good job. So.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background, even before that. I know you kind of grew up in automotive industry and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, actually, I grew up in an automotive family, really. I mean, it's generational. My dad, all of his brothers, they're all in automotive. I grew up in a shop, basically. My first job, at 15, I would go into the shop and I would mop the floors, use the floor scrubber, organize the tool shed, all that stuff. And over time, though, I became a mechanic. I worked in the parts department, wrote service. I sold cars. I did everything except for body shop. And, that was kind of my quote unquote destiny. And went to college, and in between semesters would come back and try to sell some cars. So I'm really the first one to like step away from the dealership and for a couple of generations. So it feels really good to be able to break that. But um, cars, automotive technology, it's just in my blood. I've always had a passion for cars. I just didn't know how to express it. And, in college, I got the chance to work on an electric golf cart for the electric Grand Prix. And I don't know, those kinds of things just continued to be pretty exciting to me.
nice.
Yeah. So was the electric golf cart what made you kind of start focusing on the electric world, or like, because I'm assuming if it's been going on for decades, like your family didn't start with electric vehicles.
No, I get made fun of still today, all the time. Um, I have countless group chats on my phone from family and extended family just reminding me whenever, I swear to God, whenever there's a fire, I'm the first one to hear about it. I promise you I am.
Probably multiple times.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, it's very hard because they don't understand. They don't really want to understand, which is totally, I can understand why they are like that, but it's very foreign to them, and to me, it's always been exciting. Like I've always been into like efficiency and hypermiling. I had a diesel Jetta for the longest time. It was my favorite car until we found out what Volkswagen was doing behind the scenes. But I once went 800 miles on a full tank of diesel in that thing, and I mean, it's just incredible. Like, this is awesome stuff, and it's always been kind of a draw for me. And obviously, when Tesla finally announced an affordable electric car, the Model 3, it was like, this is so incredible. Finally, they had a showroom in Indy. I took my wife there. This is too small. No, it's not going to work. Come on, it's awesome. But once they announced the Model Y, that was it. We ordered it, and she was on board, and the rest is, I guess, history.
Yeah, that sounds. I mean, ours was with a Model S, but it was older at the time because I think it was 2017 when we got our 2012 Model S. But
Hmm.
that was kind of the same conversations that were happening at our house. I was like, it's too small. We're never going to be able to fit three kids and a dog and get down to Kansas City. And he's like, no, the dog can fit in the back. Come on. And finally, I was like, just give it a try. Whatever, go for it.
Yeah, it's amazing what that can do. It's life changing, honestly, because you start to look at a whole sector of your life in a very different way. People don't realize or think about it, but the car is generally, your second largest asset, if you will, outside of investments, right? You have a house and you have a car, and you spend a ton of time in that car. So, that relationship is very real between a person and their car. So,
It is.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see somebody like you take on the, electrification side just for the simple fact of your background. You can understand where people are coming from when they maybe resist electrification and stuff like that. And so I'm excited to continue to see you push forward and do new things, especially since you're doing YouTube full time. So, what do you have on the books moving forward with YouTube and the bearded Tesla guy?
I have a lot in the works. We are a first hour reservation holder of a Volvo EX90. So, hopefully, in a year, we'll get that. Who knows when, but we'll get a Cybertruck at some point. Um,
2 weeks,
so
always.
ex-
It's
I,
two
I
weeks.
am so excited about the Cybertruck. Like, it took me forever to get over the looks, but on paper, I mean, if they can
Yes.
really deliver on what they said it can do, like, forget it. It's just incredible.
Yeah,
And if they end up doing a mid gate where you can, open up the cab to the bed, that's going to be, I mean, endless possibilities. Anyways, enough of that. So yeah, got that coming up. I'm really hoping to start a new series looking at the bigger questions. We want to replace half our gas fleet in the United States with electric cars. So how do we do that? Who are the people that are trying to answer and solve that problem? And what are the things that need to be done that haven't been done already? So, hoping to explore some of that. Of course, Tesla will always be a strong piece of the DNA of the channel, and so we'll see. Maybe it'll spin off into its own channel, but there's a lot of really exciting things happening in EVs right now, and if you're on board, it's an exciting time to be here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the explosion of new EVs that are coming to the market over the next few years is just, I mean, I remember walking around, like, especially at CES, and walking around and being like, I didn't even know they were doing electric yet, because we've been in the Rivian world and the Tesla world and the truck world. And so, looking around and figuring out, I was like, man, there's so much more happening than I even know. So
yeah. So you're getting the EX90, you said,
Oh
and
yeah.
is there? And then you said the Cybertruck. Is there any other? I would imagine the EX90 is um, because of the SUV and it fits your family good. Is that correct?
And we've always been big Volvo lovers in this house. Yeah, all of it just comes together. I'm excited to see how this LiDAR works on that car. I know that's voodoo to say in the Tesla world, LiDAR, but I am so excited because, claiming it's true hands free, I'm skeptical of that, but I'm really excited to see its capabilities, and what it can do. And it's just a beautiful, gorgeous car. I swear they know how to design a piece of art, in my opinion, of what that car is. It's beautiful. Yeah. hmm Yeah, and then we have an R1S that's been on order forever. So maybe we'll get one of those at some point. That's also a really awesome size. It's like the first SUV that's truly big enough, for a three-row SUV. And Rivians are cool in a couple of ways. I actually recently reviewed an R1T, and it was my first impressions before I started putting all my thoughts together were, man, this kind of feels like a ripoff of Tesla in some ways, right? Like to activate the auto steer, you do the same thing. The way that the screen is kind of laid out is very similar, and all these things just kind of came together. It's like this kind of feels, but then after a day, it was like, maybe that's not a bad thing, and that's what I started coming back to. Maybe Tesla did such a good job of making it intuitive, kind of like that iPhone experience. It's not a hard learning curve, so it's not necessarily a bad thing that we're starting to do some of the same things in other cars. And I mean, if you got into a Rivian as a Tesla owner and you've never been in a Rivian, you would know how to drive it. It was that similar, and honestly, I think that's a good thing. So that car drove fantastic. I went like 341 miles at 70 miles an hour in that thing, which is crazy. And it just the bed is crazy small, and I'm not crazy about that. But otherwise, as a commuter, great space on the inside if you just need two rows, two up front and three in the back, and plenty of extra cargo. It's definitely awesome for an urban customer, in my opinion. Maybe not so much the worker that needs the space
Space,
and
yeah.
towing and all that stuff.
I mean, for a
Yeah.
family car though, we just got into our first R1S just this last week. We were able to go get into it and see the size of it and everything. And you know, the storage overall on the R1T is fantastic, but I was just really surprised at actually how much space there was in the R1S because we've had a Yukon before and there's more space behind the back seat than in the R1S than there was in our Yukon, which is kind of mind blowing when you look at it from the outside because you're like, there's no way. But the space is used really well. So, for the commuter or the family, or, I think that those are really great vehicles. And especially if somebody's wanting something, a truck or a slightly bigger SUV, that has been in it and has been in the Tesla world before. It is such a seamless transition from the Tesla to the Rivian. And like you said, Tesla did such a good job. Why do we need to go reinvent the wheel when it comes to the electric vehicle and how it operates? I think it was a smooth transition, and so we've really liked the Rivian line as well. So I mean, I am sold. Like I'm probably
Yeah.
becoming the Rivian fangirl over here. Where he's still, exploring other things. I'm like, let's just Rivian. Why would we want to do anything else?
They're honestly they're beautiful too. I think that the design cues are awesome. I know that the headlights are polarizing for people, but if you can get past that, if you don't like the headlights, the rest of it's just a fantastic car. That frunk is enormous, and like I said, I've only seen the outside of an R1S. I have not been on the inside, but what you just said is what I was hoping would be the experience inside of that thing. So, I mean, that's really compelling, and that's a huge benefit. But here's the thing: all the cars we just talked about, what's the cheapest one? Right? That's a problem. That's a big problem. I know that the average car in the United States just surpassed $50,000, which is crazy. But um, that's heavily driven up by very expensive cars. We have a whole group in the United States who, probably myself included, can't really afford these cars. We don't need another 80, $100,000, you name it. We need a $30,000 car or SUV that has fast charging, has really good range, has driver assistance programs, can do all these things and do it well. we don't need all these luxury brands to pop up, and that's the one discouraging part of where we're at today. And I don't really see an awesome, like a true vision of how we get to the next step. Tesla has talked about working on this $25,000 Tesla Forever. And I know that, priorities change based on resources. I really hope that they're spending a good time behind the scenes on that. I know they're working to bring the cost of the Model 3 down, which is great, but we can't have one option. The Chevy Bolt, stupid, crazy deal. Like, if you're not considering a Bolt and you're thinking EVs, you should really think hard about it, because at least through March, $7,500 on top of that. It's like a $19,000 car.
Oh, it's
Um,
crazy.
but again, I mean, you don't have access to fast charging, so it's only good for if you're staying close to home. So it's limited, right? The Equinox EV that's coming out, I'm very excited to see that. I hope that they execute well on it, because from my understanding, 200 kilowatt charge rate, which is respectable, right? Now you're starting to say you can travel in this thing. So really hope that I've not usually been a fan of Chevy, but they seem to be sticking their flagpole into the ground of affordability. And I really hope that they're successful in that, because we need more people to be spending time and resources in that space.
Yeah, I agree. You stated the Chevy Bolt that's a fantastic buy. And I do
Yeah.
hope that GM follows through with all of their great marketing about how they're coming to market with all these, vehicles and how great they are and affordable. So I hope that follows through as well. It just seems to be taking a bit longer uh, than I would like or like to see, so we can get those vehicles on the market. And I
Yeah.
also think that there is a huge void of affordability in electric vehicles, and hopefully as they produce more, get some of their you know uh, builds down a little bit cheaper and stuff like that, they can do that. But, some of these vehicles that do cost a lot of money, I mean, they just have a lot to them as well. And so I often wonder if they can even get them that cheap with a lot of the, things that we have become accustomed to in electric vehicles. Your Tesla Model Y, I mean, it can drive itself. Like, how much does that system cost? It's probably, I don't know the answer, but I'm assuming it's 15, 20,000 just right off the bat, just how much they put into it. But as they can produce more, maybe they can bring that cost down. What's your thought on a lot of the creature comforts of modern EVs and the cost of that?
Yeah, it's like the automotive equivalent of scope creep, right? Like, I think you said it right. We've become accustomed to some very nice features in cars, and it's hard to look at options when they don't even have that, because it's almost like you balk at it, right? That's a good point. I guess I hadn't really thought much about it that way. So yeah, that's definitely going to be a challenge. One of the other things too that I think gets missed a lot is, you know, people say, like the Model Y, it's a 50, $60,000 car, right? Well, it's really not. It's like a $25,000 car on a $25,000 battery, right? Like, there's so much cost in the batteries and the motors, at least right now, and that continues to come down, which is fantastic. I really hope that this next generation of 4680 battery cells is as big as has been promised, especially from a cost perspective, because that's only good for the whole industry. And as Tesla can't do it on their own, so they have partners like Panasonic, LG, who are going to have to make these too, and it's going to just open up the electric world to even more possibilities. But yeah, I mean, that's why the Chevy Bolt is so small. And yeah, it has some of the features, but it's tiny, right? They used a design from overseas that was affordable, and that's how they got the price point where it is. That's why I'm excited to see the Equinox, see if it is that much better.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you get into a Chevy Bolt, and it definitely uh, it just not that feels cheap. It just definitely feels cheaper when you get into a Tesla. In my opinion, the vegan leather feels nice. Like everything feels really good. It's got the screen in there, and so there is a little bit of a cheaper feeling to the Bolt when you get in it. At least my experience, but the actual driving experience to me is, I mean, it's not exactly like a Tesla. I'm not going to say it's like on rails or anything, but you still get that great feeling that you get from an electric vehicle. It's planted to the ground, it's quick, like all those things, especially when you're coming from a gas or a diesel vehicle to an electric vehicle. It still has a lot of those characteristics. So I guess we're both buying Bolts.
seriously, if anybody listening, if you're considering your first electric car or even a second electric car and you haven't looked at a Bolt, you should seriously look at a Bolt. This is not sponsored. It is just the dumbest, craziest deal I've ever heard of in my life with this $7,500. So once those rules come into play, we'll see how much of that 7,500 they get to keep. But
Yeah,
oh my God, it's just 19 grand, man.
I
19
know.
grand. Do I need another car? Like,
Yeah, try talking yourself out of that. It's really difficult to when you know how much is in that vehicle.
yeah, 250, 60 miles of range, something like that. Like, that's such a good value. Such a good value.
Yeah, and I would urge people that like you talked about, it doesn't have very well high-speed DC fast charging. I would urge people to look at it that already have maybe a road tripping vehicle or something like that. Maybe even somebody like you that already has a Tesla Model Y that they can go road tripping in that thing pretty easy. And this is just something that they're using not around town. I hate saying that because you can still take it on a decent trip. You can still go 100 miles out and 100 miles back pretty easy. And as long as you have a decent charger at home, you can fill that sucker back up. And it's a small enough battery. If you commute uh, probably less than 40 miles, like you could easily run that thing on a outlet, just a regular outlet. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a great vehicle. It's super efficient
we
too.
ha-
So
we have. I've finished most of the filming for our 10,000 mile review on the Model 3 that we have. We have a long range Model 3, and one of the things that I struggle with is having two long range cars like that. I don't really use, the range that the thing has. I haven't taken it on a road trip. Um, I haven't really driven anywhere far with that. My wife, I try to get her to use it when she goes to and from work. She's a nurse, so 3 days a week she drives 45 miles that way, 45 miles back home. And we do use 120 during those 3 days that she's working because I don't have a charger close enough to the outside of the house yet. So it does works great. But I mean, that's a ton of battery just sitting there not being used. And yeah, there's so many. I think people just can't get past the idea of I can't go from New York to Florida or whatever. But how many times do they actually do that? Most people aren't crazy like me. I drive all the time. I love road trips, but most people don't do that anymore. So
Well, and part of me, like, as we're looking at the electrification, and especially here in America, where we like our big stuff, right? Like, we like our big trucks, we like our big SUVs. We want everything big, and we want it to go far, and we want it to be powerful, even if we're never going to use those things, So part of me looking at what's coming out and all of the trucks and stuff, like, is that where we have to start? Do we have to start with these giant batteries, get people on board, loving the experience, and then funnel it down from there as people get more and more used to it?
Hummer EV.
Yeah, Hummer EV, for
oh,
instance.
yeah, yeah, you saw how quick they were able to deliver that thing. I remember when they announced, I'm like, when is this thing actually going to come out? It's like 12 or 18 months later, it was like in customers' hands. Jesus, that
Yeah.
was fast.
And it's
Yeah, they
not
were
to go back
serious
to the
about
bolt,
that.
not to go back to the bolt, but isn't it 3 or 4 bolts and batteries? I'm pretty sure it's 4 bolt batteries. Well, close to it.
185 kilowatt hour battery.
It's just massive.
Like,
Yeah.
Massive.
Well, the Hummer,
holy shit.
no, the Hummer EV is 214 kilowatt hours.
Maybe I'm thinking of the shorter range one that they haven't released. It
Yeah,
starts at
and
like
I think
185
so.
kilowatt
Yep,
hours.
yep.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
like
I
over
think
200 kilowatt hours.
yeah, but I think isn't the max pack on the RVing going to be that big too, like 180
Oh, it's gonna
something?
be big. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they just announced that that's not coming anymore.
Only with the dual motor is what they
Okay.
said, and then they pushed it out. Inside EVs just put an article out. I need to go read that a little bit and get caught up on that information. But yeah, so yeah, I think that when we had Andy Thompson, he owns Can-Am RVs up in Canada, and he towed a 27-foot
30.
Airstream, 30-foot. No, it's 27.
Oh yeah, it is 27 because they're gonna
Yeah.
get the 30 when it comes out with
So
the hatch. Yep.
27 foot Airstream from where at in Canada?
London,
Ontario, Canada to Colorado, and he also went down to Florida, down by you, and anyways, he towed that with the Tesla Model S, and listening to him is very intriguing because he's figured out a way that makes it very comfortable for him, and 100 miles to 120 miles at a time. He says that's perfect. Like he thinks that larger battery packs aren't really worth it because, especially in the Tesla world, you have a Tesla supercharger so often. He was saying as he got closer down to Florida, it was like every 40 miles or something like that. It was just anyway. So he it was interesting listening to him because he had an argument for larger battery packs are not really worth it, and that's kind of seems the way that you lean a little bit too. So
To some extent. If I'm towing though, I want to be able to go more than 100 miles between charges. I've done that 3 times, and I did not enjoy that because it's not just stopping to charge every 100 miles, it's stopping to charge to 100% every 100 miles. That's really the problem. I don't think there's any issue with stopping every 100 miles. We had to use a Tahoe once to tow, and I had to stop every 150 miles and put like 25 freaking gallons in that thing. Like, it was crazy. So it's not that. It's just, it takes so long to get that much of a charge. Now, if there's a charger every 50 miles, or I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't like stopping every hour, but 100 miles is a good spot. As long as you can get enough charge to make the next 100 miles in that 30-minute window, I think that's really the sweet spot. Yeah, it doesn't have to be 200 kilowatt hours. I agree, but just enough that you can charge fast enough to tow 100 miles between charges.
I think once we understand the inefficiencies of aero from a trailer and stuff like that, and how they can manufacture them maybe a little bit different or something like that, and help with that, then you're really going to see that a little bit better. It's just so blatantly obvious in an electric vehicle
Yep.
just because of how efficient they are, and so it you can't throw an auxiliary tank in your Model Y, and
Right.
so that's yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's what they're going to be aiming for in things like the E-Stream and stuff, where like that is your auxiliary tank for if
Sure.
you're towing,
Yeah.
like you have that's helping to get it down the road. And, I think there's some other companies that we're going to have to start like keeping our eye on. Like Lightship has started to announce that they are going to give details on what they're creating. But it's an electric vehicle. Like that's, they're saying it's an electric vehicle. So are we going to start seeing auxiliaries in the form of just that it's just the trailer itself,
Yeah, but I believe you're going to have to get some of these bigger brands that are cheaper trailers on
Yeah.
board with it, because you can't, throw in a $25,000 battery pack underneath a
Yeah.
trailer with I don't know how much a motor costs, but it's probably not cheap.
Yeah,
And so
there's
that,
a big impact that can be had with design. Big impact, way bigger than strapping a bunch of batteries, which is still a great idea. But if you walk through the lot at your local RV dealer, find one that's aerodynamic. Their version of aerodynamic, like they market this stuff as, look how much more aerodynamic our design is, but it's not. It's terrible, right? But in that world, that is very foreign. So there's a huge learning curve and a very big paradigm shift that has to happen as we start to look at, well, half the fleet's going to be electric. So this is a very important question. I think the towing the towing studies I did in our first Model Y didn't really matter the weight. So 3,000 pounds and 1,500 pounds was the same because of the air drag. It was 100% the air drag.
Yep. And
Yeah.
that's what we've seen too. And that's why we made the switch to an Airstream, because we had a giant 3-slide, flat-faced, 37-foot huge trailer that was under the towing limit for the Rivian. The Rivian could have towed it, but we were like, it's going to get about 50 miles, and that's about all
Yeah.
the further we're going to get to go. And
it
so
would have been interesting testing.
it would have. We just so we went to the Airstream because it's just that you get that much more range just because of the aerodynamics. It's a little bit lighter, but and a little bit shorter, but where the majority of it comes from is simply the round shape of the
Yep.
Airstream.
Yep.
Craziness.
So when you were towing your trailer, did you just tell us a little bit about that? I know that decrease in range and all of that, and there was some criticism of that, or not criticism, but a downfall of that. But other characteristics of towing with it, how did you feel?
Super stable. Um, Gobs and gobs of power. I had no issue pulling that thing. Uh, Taking out the amount of energy it consumed, if you just discount that completely, it was a very pleasant towing experience. Didn't feel like you're being thrown around by semis. I didn't have any problem keeping any speed I wanted. Could go uphill, downhill, didn't really matter. It was just stable and it felt good, and it didn't really have traditional issues that you might expect from such a small vehicle pulling, a pretty sizable trailer.
Yeah. It's it's that's one of the like first things that we tell people is that you're the towing experience, if you just take out the range equation for a second, is that it's going to be a really good experience. So many people don't tow because of how scary it feels to drive a trailer. You're going down the road and it's pushing you around, and like, go do it with an electric vehicle and you're not going to experience that anymore. And I think that's a huge benefit when it comes to helping people make the switch, and saying that it is a viable option for towing and such.
Yep, totally agree. It's where
Yeah.
solid state batteries are going to change the game.
Yes.
Now you were just recently at a NASCAR event, right?
Yeah, the Daytona 500.
Yeah. How was that?
Yeah, it was good. I've been going to races with my dad for a long, long time. So now I live here. He flew down for a convention thing, and we went to the race together. It was a pretty good time. Not a lot of electric cars there. Um, Surprising, I know. There were a couple though. I didn't catch a picture of it, but there was a Model Y that was painted up like either Wonder Bread or it was Mario. It was one of the two. It was like white, blue, red. Wheels were red. That was pretty fun. But yeah, it was hard to find my crowd there. No electric people.
No, but still a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's still fast cars going around, precision driving, still fun to watch.
Yeah. So, do you ever see that transition ever happening?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I got to see the Formula E race in Shanghai. That was really cool. It's going to be interesting to see how they figure it out, though, because they're going to have to figure out all these rules that are very different than what they have today, and it'll just be very interesting. I think it's going to be a much faster sport too, because you're only going to be able to, either swap out the batteries so many times. Like there's some smaller leagues right now where the rule is you just can't change the battery. So you know it makes for a shorter race, but it also takes away some of the excitement. So I don't know. There's a lot to figure out on how to make this work right.
That's awesome. So, are there some in the United States? I guess I don't even know about that much.
Yeah, there's some leagues. I can't speak to which ones they are, but the last one that I had heard about, the guy who kept winning, his strategy was to not drive fast at all, and so he would be down multiple laps, but he could just drive continuously, so he could get more miles.
It's the story of the rabbit and the hare, I guess.
Yeah,
There you
Or
go.
exactly.
tortoise and the hare.
Yeah,
What did
tortoise
I
in the
say?
hair,
Yeah.
rabbit in the
That's the same thing.
Yeah. Slow and steady wins the race.
Yep.
That's cool. So, all right. So you say you're doing a lot of road tripping. Are you currently doing some road tripping, or you
I've got
got
some
anything
planned
planned? Yeah.
where I really want to do coast to coast in Canada. I did it here in the United States. I also want to go from Mexico to Canada, and then probably in the nearer future, I'm planning a road trip weaving through the country for a top secret video project. So that'll be fun.
Nice.
Top secret.
Lot
I like Top
yeah.
Secret. Tell us about it. That's awesome. So, yeah. So will you go into Mexico, or you just stick to the border?
It's a good question. I've been through the border many times in my previous life, just from work. We had factories down in the Baja, so I've never crossed it on my own though, and I probably don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Nice. I'd love to go down there. So if you ever go down there, let me know.
Yeah, it's beautiful, especially down the coast. You can see all the tuna fishers from cliffs, and it's really cool. And if you ever want to swim with whale sharks, apparently that's a really good place. By the way, who knew? Who knew?
Huh. Didn't know that.
I know.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the coast of Mexico. Yep.
All right. Well, I'll take your word for it and start swimming.
You just jump in. But I mean, it sounds like, it's we do the same thing where we're like, okay, we get all of these trips lined up and stuff, and so making them all happen and just going exploring. It's just fun to get in the car and go and travel and see all there is to see. Like I appreciate flying. You can get from point A to point B relatively quickly, but there's just something to be said about getting in the car and just driving and being in it and seeing all of the things along the way that, it's just fun. Love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, the journey is part of the experience. Totally agree. Nobody goes through a flight, through the airport, through all that and says, "Man, that was an awesome journey." Nobody. Yeah.
Right on that one.
Yeah, yeah, man, this view of this middle seat was just epic.
Oh my god. Yeah.
All right. So I'm always interested in what family thinks of driving an electric vehicle. So what do your kids think? What do your wife think when you go on these
We
road
are
trips?
super lucky because we started them young. Basically, as soon as we got the Model Y, within a month or like a month, we went on our first road trip. So kids have been on road trips their whole lives, and they do really good with it. We're very lucky there. Our oldest, he does get car sick, so I have to be careful. Usually just staying on the highway helps, but the wife, she doesn't mind it at all. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody really minds too much. You know, just do really well, and it's convenient because we all get to stretch our legs every couple of hours. Yeah. The only thing I don't like about road trips is the food because it's so unpredictable and it's never good food. It's never good for you. It's just that kind of wears you down a little bit.
It does.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We did a recent trip where we actually with the R1T where we took our pellet grill and just plugged it in and cooked while we were at the um, DC fast charger. So
Hmm.
when you get the Cybertruck or something like that, you'll have to you know take something along to grill so you can cook it nice. And there's obviously lots of coolers out there and stuff that could just plug into the vehicle, and so obviously it's more planning, but
Well, but I mean, having that option because there are still, so one that pops into mind is Grand Island, Nebraska, where there used to be an Arby's in that gas station,
yeah,
but it's not there
fantastic
anymore,
Arby's.
and there is nothing around there, so there's still places. Joplin, Missouri, the supercharger there is
Oh
another
God,
example. Like, there's still places where there isn't even food around the chargers and stuff. So you do have to kind of think ahead about that. And then, you're usually limited on what your choices are. It is still one bit of a downside where, you might, when we were driving a gas vehicle, we'd look at the gas stations and see what
yeah,
restaurants were near there, and then we'd go and stop there based on what restaurant it is. But you don't always have that option with charging.
yeah, eating's a great point. So, do your kids get really excited about electric vehicles, or is it just kind of the norm for them?
No, I'm hoping it's because they're still too young. It's going to be heartbreaking for me because listening to a lot of coworkers from my previous life, their kids are between 16 and 20, and a handful of them, their kids didn't even get their license till they were 18, and there's this whole shift, and it's hard for me because I mean, I was counting down the minutes to get my driver's
Yeah,
license.
me too.
Yep.
And a lot of kids, not all, but a lot of kids these days, they don't care. They don't care about it. That's going to be hard for me.
Yeah, which may be a good argument for full self-driving. So,
Yeah, it will eventually. It's going to happen, and whether that's 2 weeks or 2 decades, it is going to happen. But it's going to be for the better. And I'm kind of working on a bigger video around this whole topic because I don't think people realize just how big this is. Forget the commercialization of it, like people talking about making $1 million with their sidecar. It's not. Let's forget that for a minute. What it really does is it gives access to mobility to everyone. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for equality and giving everybody a chance, you know, to do what they need to do. Like, yeah, I think that there's some really awesome benefits societally that are going to come from that. And it's going to change everything. And most of us aren't going to own a car anymore. And what are we going to do with all that money that we're not spending on cars? So,
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's such a it's such an all or nothing when you look at people from the outside and making the argument that full self-driving it's just terrible and horrible, and they're wanting it to be completely perfect immediately, and there has to be the progression of making it better as it goes along. And you get in one of those vehicles and sure they make mistakes, but you need to be aware of what's going on right now because that's the phase that we're in. But then you also see where it sees something that you didn't, and it corrects for it and whatnot, and benefits there as well as people taking away the human error element of it. you know it's going to be a slow progress, but you can see where it's headed, and you can see that people that wouldn't normally be able to get places are going to be able to use that technology to do it. And you see that moms can go put their kids in a car, on their 16th birthday and not be deathly afraid that they're not going to come home because they're driving themselves for the first time. There's just a whole lot, as long as people can be patient and let it progress the way that it needs to.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. It really is in many, many ways.
Yeah, well, I'll be excited to see that video, and that'll be on your YouTube channel, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess most of the people probably know you. I mean, I've been following you for a long time, and so I appreciate all your content. But anyways, where do you like to interact with people? Where do you like people to find you?
I probably the easiest way to interact is Twitter, and but you can also interact on Instagram. Probably just easier to tag me on Twitter. Yeah, I listen, as long as people aren't rude and are nasty, I respond to everybody. And, I take pride in that. People spend the time to, like yourself, where you subscribe to the channel, you watch the content, and I appreciate it so much. And I am, the least I can do is spend some time to reply to people. So, yeah, as long as you're not nasty, I'll reply.
Yeah, we run into that too. So it's we love to reply as well. So it's great to hear that from you, and we really do appreciate you coming on here and sharing what you're doing in life and your experience. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll leave you with one fact from a person who's never driven, sat in, even as a passenger in an electric car. Did you know it cost daily, it costs more money in electricity to drive a Tesla than it does a Toyota Tundra? Like, you can fill an entire tank of the Toyota Tundra. That cost is the daily cost of the electricity in a Tesla.
Just
That's your fact.
All
That
right.
is your fact for the day.
I like
I'm gonna
that.
start putting this stuff together, like fun
do it.
facts about electric cars, and it's all crap.
I like it. We're on board for that. Count us in.
Yeah, we'll add to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, really enjoyed talking to you, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks.
Yeah, sounds good, guys.
Thanks for listening. Find all of our show notes at allelectricfamily.com/allelectricconversations. Be sure to connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at All Electric Family. Find us on Twitter as All Electric Fam. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed this story, please be sure to share it and hit that subscribe button. Leave a review and help inspire others to hit the road. Until next time, stay charged.